10 minutes before I was supposed to say I do, my tie was finally straight and my hands had stopped shaking. The music outside the doors floated through the hallway like it was carrying my whole future on a string. Someone laughed. Someone sniffled. My best man, Jace, clapped my shoulder and said, "This is it." Then her phone, left on the chair in my room because she'd forgotten it during pictures, started buzzing like it was panicking. Once, twice, then again, faster. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up with a preview that hit like a brick. "I can't wait to see you after the ceremony." My brain tried to explain it away before my heart could react. Maybe it was a bridesmaid. Maybe it was her cousin. Maybe it was some harmless plan for a surprise. Then the next notification slid in. "He has no clue. He thinks you're just a co-worker." My stomach flipped so hard I had to grab the edge of the counter. A third message arrived immediately. "Delete our thread after this. I don't want him seeing anything." That's when the air changed. That's when it stopped being maybe. A wedding day has a strange kind of clarity. Everything is supposed to be simple. This wasn't simple. This was deliberate. I stood there staring at the phone like it was a live wire. I didn't want to be the person who ruins a wedding over a misunderstanding. But I also couldn't be the person who walks down an aisle with doubt clawing at his throat. I told myself one rule: confirm, don't assume. Her passcode was the same as it had been for years, our anniversary date. My thumb hovered for a second, like a moral checkpoint. Then I unlocked it. The message thread opened under a name I didn't recognize. Mason Red Heart. That heart emoji felt like someone had scribbled on a contract I hadn't read yet. The most recent messages were time-stamped within the last hour. Then I scrolled. Last night. 2 nights ago. Earlier this week. My throat tightened as I read. "Last time was worth the risk," one message said. Mason replied, "I'm not sharing you with him much longer." She answered, "Just be patient. After today, we'll have more time." My mouth went dry. I scrolled again, faster, hoping I'd hit a point where the story turned into a joke, a prank, anything less than what it was. But it didn't. It got worse. Hotel plans, "I miss you," and lines that made it clear this wasn't flirting. It was cheating. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was how casual they were, like this was a normal part of her day, the same way coffee and traffic were normal. "He's so happy," she wrote. "It makes me feel guilty." Mason answered, "Then don't marry him." And she replied, "It's complicated. Just meet me after the ceremony." I stared at that line, "after the ceremony," until my vision tunneled. I pictured her in her dress, smiling at me, while she planned to sneak away to someone else afterward. I pictured my parents out there, proud and emotional. I pictured her parents too, everyone believing they were witnessing something real. And behind the scenes, it was a lie. A knock on the door snapped me back. 2 minutes, someone called from the hall. I nearly dropped the phone. My voice felt foreign when I answered, "Okay," like nothing had changed. The instinct to protect the moment, protect everyone's feelings, rose up automatically. That's what people do. They keep the show running. But I realized something right then. If I walked out there, I'd be protecting her secret, not the wedding. I took screenshots of the conversation, only the parts that mattered, because I knew what happens when someone gets cornered. They deny. They twist. They call you crazy. Evidence wasn't revenge. It was my seatbelt. I locked the phone and set it back exactly where it had been, like perfect placement might keep my world from sliding off its track. Then I stared at my reflection. Suit. Cufflinks. The same haircut I'd gotten for the pictures. I looked like a groom, but my eyes looked like someone who'd just been robbed. My chest rose and fell too fast. I forced myself to slow down. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. There was no time for a long meltdown, no room for a dramatic collapse. If I wanted this to happen on my terms, I had to decide what those terms were. Calm, clear, controlled. No screaming, no begging, just a clean stop. I called Jace. He answered on the first ring, excited. "It's time, man." I cut in. "We're not doing this," I said. Silence. Then what? I kept my voice steady, almost cold, because if I sounded emotional, I knew I'd start cracking. "I found texts on her phone," I said. "She's cheating. It's not old. It's current. They're planning to meet after the ceremony." Jace didn't speak for a second, and I could hear the music outside, like it belonged to someone else's life. "Are you sure?" he asked finally. "I'm sure," I said. "I need you in here now, and I need you to help me stop this before anyone pressures me into walking out anyway." Jace arrived so fast it felt like he'd been waiting outside the door. The second he saw my face, his expression changed. No questions, no doubt. "Show me," he said. I handed him my phone with the screenshots. He read them, jaw tightening, eyes hardening. "Oh my God," he breathed. Then he looked up at me. "What do you want to do?" That question mattered. It gave me control at the exact moment everything else had tried to take it away. "We stopped the ceremony," I said, quietly. "No public blow-up unless it becomes unavoidable. We tell the officiant. We tell my parents. Then I talk to her. I'm not disappearing. I'm not letting this turn into a story where I got scared." Jace nodded like he was receiving instructions in a crisis, which, honestly, he was. "Okay," he said. "First, officiant. Second, your family. Third, confrontation. And I'm staying with you the whole time." He paused, then added, "You don't have to explain anything to guests today. You don't owe anyone a performance." My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. "I know," I said, "but I do owe myself a decision I can respect tomorrow." Jace opened the door and stepped into the hallway first, scanning like he was making sure nobody could ambush me with encouragement. "You're doing the right thing," he said quietly. "We're doing it clean." I followed him, each step feeling like walking through water. The officiant, Mr. Halperin, stood near the side entrance with his notes and a calm smile. He saw us and started to speak, but Jace stepped in gently. "Sir, we need a moment," he said. Mr. Halperin blinked. "A moment." I stepped forward before my nerves could rewrite my plan. "I can't do the ceremony," I said. My voice didn't wobble, and that surprised me. Mr. Halperin's expression softened immediately. "Son," he said, "what happened?" I held out my phone. "I found messages," I said. "She's been cheating. She was planning to meet him after the ceremony." He read a few lines, then looked up with real sadness. "All right," he said. "We'll pause everything." Mr. Halperin moved quickly, whispering to the coordinator. The coordinator's bright, wedding smile disappeared as if someone switched it off. The music outside faltered, then stopped. That silence was louder than any song. A ripple of confusion ran through the guests, like wind moving through grass. I kept my eyes forward. The next step was the hardest. My parents. My mom stood near the front, tissues in hand, eyes shining. My dad stood beside her, posture straight, proud. When they saw me approaching, their faces lifted until they realized I wasn't heading for the aisle. "Honey," my mom said, "what's going on?" My dad's brow pinched in instant concern. I guided them into a side room, closing the door behind us. The second it shut, my mom's smile dropped completely. "Are you sick?" she asked, already reaching for my arm. My dad's voice was low. "Talk to us." I handed them my phone. My mom read the screenshots and made a small sound like her breath had been stolen. Her hand flew to her mouth. My dad read slower, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening the more he saw. "This is from today?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "It's not a rumor. It's not a misunderstanding." My mom sank into a chair, trembling. My dad looked at me. "What do you need?" he asked, solid as a wall. "I need you to back me," I said. "No matter what." "Always," my dad said without hesitation. My mom stood and wrapped her arms around me with that fierce, protective grip moms have when they can't fix something, so they try to hold it together. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, and it wasn't her fault, but I understood. I hugged her for one long breath, then pulled away because if I stayed there, I might break. "I'm going to talk to her," I said. My dad nodded. "I'm coming," he said, not as a threat, just as support. Jace was already at the door, ready. We walked down the hall toward the bridal suite. The laughter inside sounded wrong now, like a soundtrack playing over the wrong scene. The coordinator knocked. One moment, a bridesmaid called, cheerful. The door opened, and there she was, my bride, in her dress, looking stunning, glowing exactly how I'd pictured. For half a second my brain tried to revert to the old plan, smile, pretend, survive. Then she saw my face, and the glow on her expression dimmed. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice suddenly careful. I stepped inside, closed the door, and the room went quiet. Her friends watched, confused. I didn't waste time. because time was the enemy. Time is when people start talking you out of yourself. Your phone was buzzing in my room, I said. Her eyes flicked fast. I what? She said too quick. I held up my phone with the screenshots. I saw the messages, I said. Mason, the hotel, after the ceremony. Delete everything. Her face drained of color like someone poured it out. It's not what you think, she started, and the line sounded rehearsed, like she practiced it for a different day. I kept my voice level. Don't, I said. Not loud, but firm enough that her friends froze. I'm not here for word games. I'm telling you the wedding is off. A bridesmaid gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." She took a step toward me, eyes filling. Please, she said. Let me explain. I shook my head once. You had months to explain, I said. You chose secrets instead. Her friends backed out, one by one, like they didn't want to be caught in the blast zone. The door clicked shut, leaving only us, plus Jace and my dad nearby in the doorway, silent and steady. She tried again, voice shaking. It was a mistake, she said. It didn't mean anything. I stared at her, letting that sentence hang in the air. It meant enough to hide, I said. It meant enough to plan. She wiped her cheeks, desperate. I was going to end it, she said. Today wasn't the day to drop it on you. That made something in my chest go cold. Today was the exact day, I said quietly. Because today is the day we were about to promise each other everything. And you were planning to meet him after the ceremony. Her eyes flinched away, and that tiny movement answered me more than words. She stepped closer, reaching for my hands like touching me could rewind the last 10 minutes. I stepped back. Don't, I said, softer now, because I didn't need force. I needed clarity. I'm not doing this, I continued. I'm not marrying into a situation where I have to wonder who you're texting when I leave the room. She started crying harder. I love you, she insisted. I do. I nodded, because arguing feelings was pointless. Maybe you do, I said. But love doesn't live next to lying like that. Love doesn't make plans to cheat after vows. Her mouth opened, then closed. It was only a few times, she whispered, then immediately looked horrified that she'd said it. That confession hit harder than any insult. A few times meant a pattern. A few times meant choices. Anger flashed across her face, sudden and sharp, like she was trying on a different mask. So you're just going to embarrass me? She snapped. That sentence told me everything about what she was most afraid of. Not losing me, losing control. I kept my voice calm, because calm is power in a moment like this. I'm not embarrassing you, I said. Your actions did that. I'm just refusing to carry them. She shook her head rapidly, tears falling. We can fix this, she said. Counseling. Anything. Just don't do this right now. I took a slow breath. If I marry you, I said, this doesn't become smaller. It becomes harder to leave. I'm choosing the moment with the least damage. I looked her in the eye, and I'm choosing myself. I turned toward the door. She grabbed my arm, not painful, but enough to make my skin prickle. Wait, she begged. Please. I looked down at her hand, then back up. I gave you trust, I said. Every day. That was your chance. I gently removed her fingers. This is my boundary, I added. I will not marry someone who cheats on me. My dad's presence behind me felt like gravity, steady, unmovable. Jace stepped slightly closer, just in case she tried to block the exit. I didn't need drama. I needed forward motion. We're done, I said and walked out. The hallway felt brighter, too bright, like the building didn't know it was supposed to dim for tragedy. People were already whispering. The coordinator was trying to keep things contained, but you can't contain something like this for long. My mom stood near the front, eyes red, posture rigid with effort. When she saw me, she didn't ask for details. She simply reached for my hand. I'm here, she said. That was all. Mr. Halpern stepped forward and addressed the guests with a careful voice. Friends and family, he began. There's been an unexpected situation. The ceremony will not continue today. A wave of shock ran through the room. Gasps, murmurs, questions that floated into the air and didn't land anywhere. People looked at me like I was either heartbreak personified or a villain ruining their Saturday. A few tried to approach, but Jace gently guided them away. My dad spoke quietly to the coordinator and the venue manager, setting a tone, respectful, firm, final. I didn't know a public explanation. This wasn't a courtroom. Still, I knew stories grow teeth when the truth stays silent. So when someone, an aunt I barely knew, leaned in and hissed, "Is this just cold feet?" I met her eyes and said evenly, "No. There was cheating. The wedding is off. No details. No spectacle. Just enough truth to stop the narrative from rewriting me into the problem." I walked outside into the sunlight, and the air hit my face like cold water. For the first time in minutes, I could breathe fully. I sat on a stone wall near the garden where we'd planned to take photos. The irony nearly made me laugh, but nothing came out. My phone buzzed with her name. Then again. Then again. Messages stacked up. "Please talk to me. Don't do this. I'm sorry. I love you." I turned the phone face down. Jay sat beside me, quiet for a moment. "You okay?" he asked. I shook my head. "No," I said, "but I'm not trapped." The word "trapped" surprised me, because it was exactly what I would have been if I'd walked out there. My dad came outside with a bottle of water and handed it to me without a word. Then he sat on my other side. We stared at the parking lot, where people were slowly leaving in clusters, confusion trailing behind them like ribbons. "When I married your mom," my dad said after a while, "I promised her I'd choose her every day. Not just on the wedding day, every day." He paused. "She didn't choose you." The sentence hurt because it was true, but it also soothed because it named the betrayal clearly. "You chose you," he added. "That matters." I swallowed hard. I didn't want to be the guy who ruins a wedding, I admitted. My dad's voice stayed steady. "Son, you didn't ruin anything," he said. "You stopped a lie from becoming your life." Once the crowd thinned, we handled the logistics like adults in a disaster movie. Calmly, efficiently, even though nothing felt real. The coordinator talked about vendor deposits and timelines. Jace took notes. My dad offered to cover whatever needed covering, even though I told him I'd handle my share. It wasn't about money. It was about closing the door before anyone could wedge it open with guilt. Inside, her family was devastated. I didn't hate them. They were casualties too, but I also refused to comfort everyone at the cost of my own boundaries. I kept repeating one sentence whenever anyone asked: "The wedding is canceled." I'm not discussing details today. It wasn't rude. It was survival. Her parents eventually approached me near the entrance. Her mother looked like her knees might give out. Her father's face was pale and tight with shame and anger. "We don't understand," her mom said softly. "We're so sorry." I didn't want to crush them with specifics, but I couldn't let them think this was a misunderstanding. I showed them the screenshots, only a few. Her mother's eyes filled instantly. Her father stared, then closed his eyes like he wanted to erase the image. "I had no idea," her mom whispered. I swear. I believed her. Her father cleared his throat. "If there are costs, if there's anything we need to pay back," he began. I shook my head gently. "This isn't about punishing anyone," I said. "It's about me not marrying into cheating." Her mother's voice broke. "You deserve better," she said. I didn't argue because she was right. That night, I went home to an apartment still dressed in wedding week. A printed schedule on the counter. A bag half-packed. A note stuck to the fridge that said, "Don't forget rings." I peeled the paper off like it was burning me. My phone buzzed with messages from people who want to gossip, like heartbreak was entertainment. I answered only the people who mattered, my parents, Jay's two close friends. I kept it simple. "It's over. There was cheating. I'm safe. I don't want to talk much yet." Then I turned my phone off entirely and sat in the quiet. The silence felt brutal at first, like staring at an empty stage after the show. But after a while, it felt like relief. No pretending. No smiling through knives. The next morning, the full reality arrived in waves. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept replaying those messages, trying to find a moment where this could have been stopped earlier. I remembered small things I dismissed. Her guarding her phone. Her sudden girls' nights. Her irritation when I asked basic questions. All the tiny alarms I'd labeled as stress. That's the dangerous part about trust. You can use it to build something, or someone can use it to hide something. I opened my phone and saw new messages from her. Long paragraphs, apologies, explanations that sounded like damage control. I didn't respond. Silence wasn't cruelty. Silence was me protecting the part of myself that still wanted to be convinced. Over the next few days, pieces fell into place without me even asking. A mutual friend admitted they'd seen her with a guy from work months ago, but didn't want to cause trouble. Another friend forwarded a screenshot from a group chat where someone joked, "Hope the groom doesn't find out." That one made me physically nauseous. Not just the cheating, but the idea that some people knew and treated it like a storyline. I realized something important. If I'd gone through with the wedding, I wouldn't just be marrying her. I'd be marrying a situation where disrespect had already become normal. I'd be signing up to be the last person to know my own life. That thought hardened into certainty. I didn't dodge a bad day. I dodged a bad future. Weeks later, when the shock finally stopped vibrating through my bones, I could name the real turning point. It wasn't the moment I read the texts. It was the moment right after, when I chose my self-respect over appearances. People asked, "Do you regret canceling it so close to the aisle?" I always answer the same way. I regret that it happened. I don't regret my decision. Because marriage isn't a costume you put on for a ceremony. It's a life you commit to every day. And I refuse to start that life with betrayal already in the foundation. I didn't call it off because I hated her. I called it off because I respected myself. That's what on my terms means. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.